So before we hop into the topic, I'm going to introduce all our awesome panelists really quick. We have John from Superrare, we have Misha from Snark.art, Judy from Dada, Tommy from R.A.R.E Labs, Corinne from Codex Protocol, and Dave from Origin. So before we hop into the topic, I just want everyone to introduce themselves better than we did, talk a bit about what you're building, and then we'll start talking about a lot of markets.
How's it going, everybody? My name is John. Live here in Brooklyn. I've been working on Superrare and NFT tokenization for about the past year and a half or so. Yeah, excited to be here with all you guys. Love the space.
Hi, Misha from Snark.art. We produce blockchain-based artistic experiments with various artists. Generally, these experiments involve a large group of collectors. It's kind of an experiment of co-ownership and interactivity.
Hi, I'm Judy Ma from dada.nyc or dada.art. We're going to be migrating. And we are a collaborative platform, a social network where people speak to each other through drawings, creating visual conversations that we are tokenizing on the blockchain.
Hi, my name is Tommy. I'm one of the founders of, this is going to be fun. I really like this. All of this will be one of the founders of R.A.R.E..io. I also helped organize the first R.A.R.E. Art Festival. I absolutely deserve that applause. Thank you so much. But mostly with Joe Mooney and various other folks. And life got away from me this year and wasn't able to be as big of a part. And like much better people than me stepped in to make a really cool event. So I'm just so thrilled to be here and like everything that's going on upstairs. The talks have been great and excited to talk a little bit about private markets.
Put this on our Hi guys, I'm Corinne. I'm business development at Codex Protocol. I've been there for about 14, 15 months, and I'm really excited to be here. Just moved to Brooklyn, so yeah, I'm really enjoying the crypto movement. Yay!
I'll see how that goes. Hi, I'm David Moore from the UK, CEO of Origin, which is an Ethereum arts platform. We came here just for R.A.R.E. We're loving Brooklyn, and thanks for inviting us, James. Looking forward to the discussion. Let's do this.
Put a chair over there as well. Well, right now, first, I want to definitely thank you for organizing today. James here. Okay, so let's hop in. It's called Building Collaborative Markets. Since the first day anyone has joined the blockchain space, we hear a lot about decentralization, collaboration, cooperation, breaking down centralized institutions, working together, all the juju and love. So for the sake of this conversation, I want to talk about how each of you define what a collaborative market is, how that fits into the platform that you're creating, and talk a bit about kind of the grander vision of what it means to be collaborative in an art market or a creation market, and yeah, just what you want to see come out of the space that hasn't really existed in the arts market or collectible market or auction markets, and then go from there. Does anyone want to start? All right, John, thank you.
Yeah, so I think for us, a collaborative market, just like the art market in general, it's a little hard to break into, so that was one of the things we wanted to build into the product we were working on, is just to make it super easy. Like, you don't have to be, sort of the whole ethos behind Superrare is like, we're not really trying to like curate the experience, we're more like validating these are actual, humans in the world who want to create art, and that's sort of like the minimum criteria. So just kind of like lowering that barrier. I'm not here to judge how great the work is, just if you want to sort of like take a crack at it, go for it.
With Snark, I guess the word collaboration comes more from the actual work that we do with the artists, because each of our projects is an artistic experiment, and there's a huge technical barrier when it comes to creating works that are blockchain based, and we hope to create tools that would make it easier for artists to use blockchain more like a paintbrush rather than something that's they see as a big obstacle towards creation.
I could say that we are truly collaborative in the sense that basically our entire platform and our entire vision and mission is based on artists painting, drawing together, creating art together. This is something that they do because they do not upload their stuff into our platform, but rather, as many of you know already, they draw with our tool and they create art together. And we'd like to think of it as kind of like a music jam or a jazz improvisation where each artist breaks its instrument, so to speak, to create a full melody. But more than that, so Dada in a way is not a platform where the intent of artists is to individually sell. The intent for anyone who comes into Dada is just basically to play, to explore, to collaborate with others, to actually make art. And then what we're doing very gingerly and carefully is starting to tokenize these drawings, actually issue the conversations, and the collaboration doesn't stop in the art making, but it also continues in the sharing of the profits, because artists who paint in a conversation, for example, if one of them sells, maybe they get 60%, but everybody who participated in that conversation also gets 10% proportionally. So eventually we want to create, we have a 30% community fund that's reserved in every sale, and these we want to go into universal basic income for the artists. So basically everything we do from the moment that somebody comes into the platform, and you can draw on your own, but you'll eventually have conversations with people. But from that moment to the moment that you sell, something gets sold, it's all about making community and it's all about collaboration.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about collaboration, but I just want to point out that Dada really puts us all to shame when it comes to collaboration, because they're not only collaborative with the whole community, but the art is actually created collaboratively. So it's always been one of my favorite projects. When I thought back on the last year, thinking of like R.A.R.E F1 and what we were talking about and like the primitive concepts that were being discussed, and then coming in 15 months later and like what's changed and what's worked and what hasn't. I think the number one thing I challenge us when I'm working with R.A.R.E..io or like the community in general is to remember that, we're trying to solve, we're all trying to solve problems that we've discovered that we think are crypto native and that we think crypto can help solve. At R.A.R.E we say artists deserve more. We think it's been very challenging for artists to take digital work, make it meaningful enough where people will buy it. And so we try to make it a beautiful and easy experience for them to create digital scarce works and market it to their audience. We're very artist focused. And I think that comes with being competitive in the sense of trying to be the best platform for artists and deliver them the most value vis-a-vis their ability to actually create an income stream with their art. And there can be a little bit of a focus on over-collaboration at that level, like collaboration at the actual user acquisition and artist marketing level. And I think we should remember that this is going to be a successful endeavor if we actually crack the nut 15 months later, which we really haven't, of getting people to actually engage in this sort of buying digital art that's somehow a scarce, weird concept that I think that would work. We've actually got to crack that nut. At the same token, there are primitive concepts that need to be collaborative, such as standards, interoperability, transferability, etc. And that's where we always need to sort of treat our conversations on two levels. Like, where do we need to fundamentally be collaborative and uncompromising in that? And then where do we need to be sort of uncompromisingly competitive and make sure that we actually break through and actually turn this technology into something that's real and actually is impacting people's lives? And so that's the theme that I've come into this conversation, actually the entirety of R.A.R.E F2 with, and I think after having been here today, still stands out to me as the two disparate conversations that we need to be having and have them in their exact place.
I think for Codex, the way that we play with collaboration, originally.
If you hold the mic without touching the connection, it's just the pro tip. The time is going to.
Okay.
Not the connection.
All right. Do my best. So Codex Protocol is actually a title registry for valuable collectibles. So we started off working with auction houses, and our original partners were a consortium of 5,000 traditional brick and mortar auction houses. While we're building that, and I'm sure you guys know auction houses, the world does not move quickly. So as we're working with those partners, we've kind of introduced this digital artist side of Codex, which has been very collaborative for us because it's all about working with the artists and seeing what they need, what they want. And so while yes, you can register, your assets and their provenance onto an NFT, onto a Codex record, what we're now focusing on the last few months is building out, what do digital artists need and want. And so we had this kind of unique platform that was aimed towards auction houses, and we realized, hey, this could be really helpful for digital artists. And so the past 4 or 5 months, pretty much all of my time is just working with the artists, seeing what they want, what they need, and we're just kind of building and adapting as we go, as we see the kind of weak spots in the space. And then I think the second part of collaboration for Codex is making it easy. And so we didn't want just anyone that had a MetaMask wallet. Those were the only people that could participate, those that understood how to use blockchain technologies. So we created this simple login where all you need is a email, Facebook account, whatever, and you can use Codex just through us. We talk to the blockchain for you. So that way we're trying to reach a much larger market than those that understand MetaMask and that understand blockchain technology.
I might just talk because this is going to fry someone. So I'm going to echo what the guys are saying about the kind of data model, about community and the kind of model that they're working with the new payback. I think with R.A.R.E, we started with a really simple kind of concept of how do we empower artists to kind of sell their digital pieces. I think where we're going now is how do we adopt some kind of principles across all the platforms where we're all talking about kind of commissions on do we even need to take commissions, and do we even should we always adopt a secondary sale model, and should there always be a community kind of feel to the platforms that we're creating? It still feels to me, I might be wrong, but we're still in these kind of silos, and we have our own kind of missions and ethos. And actually, should we just tear all that down and say, if we truly want to move this kind of art kind of industry, we work together and just have some kind of really simple principles that we kind of agree to, and kind of like a mission statement is the kind of 5 or 6 or 10 platforms that are here to kind of say, do you know what, let's just adopt the dada model, because it seems to be the most appropriate and the most kind of fair is probably the wrong word, but it's the one that puts the artist at the forefront of the thinking. When we started we moved really quickly, and we just made a really simple smart contract, and it had restrictions, and it was you put up your artwork, we'll take a small commission, you'll make a sale. There's way more to it now. Like Tom said, 15 months later, it's not even about that. It's actually about how do we empower artists to collaborate with each other, and how do we ensure that collectors know that they're buying legitimate stuff. Because we all have the same artists on the same platforms. So we should empower the collector and let them know that the thing they're buying off R.A.R.E or Superrare or R.A.R.E Labs, it's the real deal, and it's from the same artist, they're just on different platforms. And if we adopt the data model, it's the rules are simple, the rules are there. That's cool.
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of that. I think where we are having this conversation today, and I think where we should try to keep it is what are those fundamental primitives? And I think definitely authenticity is the one where I really want to see the community rally around. How do we decide Because there's actually been some times like where artists have put the same piece of art on multiple platforms. Fine with me, but then at the same time, I think that's probably one where we should be clear on how many editions of that there are, for example. So if there's 10 on every art labs, yeah, exactly. If there's 10 over here and there's 10 over there, we probably actually do need some standard to say there's actually 20, or we should just decide we just don't do that, and it's got to be on one or one or the other, right? So those are the kind of primitives where I really feel like we need to be on the same page. And then I actually do think there should be more experimentation around I would not want to see a standardization around payouts yet, because I think there's probably just more to be learned about what the secondary sale model is. What we're talking about here is if you resell, if I sell Judy a piece of art and then she resells it, when she resells it, should the artist get paid again? And that's not like a royalty. And that's not how physical art works, but that's something we can natively enable with digital art. But will that make the collector less likely to buy, and will that hurt the market, or will that make the market better? We don't know. So I think that's where there's still a lot of room for experimentation. But where I don't think we need to be experimenting, or where I think we need to be very fundamental, is that scarcity is important. Authenticity should be something that we share amongst ourselves as a consortium, and have like fundamental concepts that we all try to really adhere to, so that we can speak with one voice and say, when you buy art from at least people who, platforms that adhere to this very narrow, very thin layer of standards. Should not be very many things. But as long as you adhere to these very thin layer of standards, we will all agree that this is scarce digital art.
I was just gonna quickly add, one thing that we've been talking a lot about too is like helping define what it is the collector's buying. So like, you know, there's like the resale right often, or like where does the file sit? Is the, you know, file scarcity, like really, if we all have the same answer, then collectors will feel a lot more empowered. So that's, I think, totally part of that, and like really help grow the ecosystem.
I'm sorry, I'm a bit exhausted, but I was just thinking, like, this happened in the art show upstairs that Dada sponsored and we organized, and it's really interesting because we were trying to make sure that we didn't get repeated pieces, and I really love to see like art kind of moving around, but all of a sudden I'm seeing in my mural people who submitted art to the curated art show, and I'm seeing it's also on maybe either your platform or your platform, and so we get repetitions, right? And it's perfectly fine, but we were trying actually, I was trying to tell artists, try to make sure, talk to your platform so that you submit stuff that they are not going to submit, so that you don't have 4 copies of the same thing, right? So that's one thing. The other thing that I know is that I think Bea has been in touch with the community, together with Danny from Maker's Place. We've been having conversations about agreeing on certain standards that we can all use. I mean, I don't know if everybody wants to adopt the data model or what that even means, but at least certain standards. I, for instance, and this is a different thing, but my dream would be that we all own different pieces of art from different platforms. I own a CryptoPunk and a CryptoKitty and dada.art, and I have something from Superrare, and I can't see it all in the same place, for instance. And so, as a collector, and this is the thing, we also all know that the same people who are making the art are the people who are buying the art. And so we all need to work together, and this is where the collaboration really comes from. This is a fabulous community, but we need to work together to actually reach out to the collectors, because I think we're preaching to the choir, right? We all are convinced, we all know that it works, but we haven't found the market yet. So how do we actually reach out to collectors by educating people, by onboarding people to wallets, but also maybe, I mean, hopefully by having some kind of broadly used standard, either a wallet or either, just a way to display the art that can mimic what collectors want, which is to feel that they own the art and they can enjoy it.
Only that from our experience, because we made a lot of effort to try to go outside of the typical crypto community and really go after the traditional art collectors. And obviously, blockchain in state today, for a regular person, it's too many hoops to jump through, even regardless of like the entry point. You could be talking about something that could be under $100 or thousands of dollars once. It's just too many steps, and if there's a way to collaborate on creating some kind of infrastructure, whether it's a wallet or something where these steps are minimized and make the experience much easier, I think it would be great for everyone.
I think that to a certain extent, the market kind of will come to us when it's easier to use, and there's some better solutions out there, especially when it comes to like collaborating amongst each other. And so right now, like we're seeing at Codex, we're seeing a lot more traditional art world players coming in as we've, kind of given them easier solutions. So I think until we can figure out like you're saying something really interesting where you can all view your works that you own on different platforms in one place, I think that's going to be really, really important to get traditional art people to come to the crypto art space because that's what they're used to, that's what they can use. And if they feel like they have to have 6 different accounts and all of their artwork is scattered everywhere, it doesn't really make sense for them to come. But if you're already someone who's interested, yeah, of course you're going to have all these different, accounts of awesome.
One thing that Joe has talked about for a long time and has sort of bitched about in the Ethereum community, and I think I'm not wrong in saying that, is that nobody will roll their own Ethereum wallets. So just to give one example, I think infrastructure to make things easier is like, let's say you come to buy a piece of art and you've been convinced by an artist that you care about, you care nothing of crypto. You're willing to understand that that's what makes it scarce, but otherwise you care nothing about crypto, and you want to own this piece of art. Really, you should be able to buy that like you buy anything, with maybe like literally no other steps ideally. And that's going to take, I think, more adoption of actually handing people their own Ethereum or Bitcoin or kind of party or whatever it is wallet, so that you can just, you don't need to know, you don't have to have gone and set one up and then say, oh, here's my wallet. You just get one and then you buy it. US dollar and fiat payments, I think, are another thing. And what I would really love to see somebody build, and what I think would be widely adopted, and I know it would have been adopted by R.A.R.E Labs, we didn't have to just go do a lot of this stuff over the last, with what we released over the last month, which I think is I hope you all give it a try. I think it's really great. Is if somebody had just come with the PayPal for this, like here's like a button, and if I hit it, it will spin up a modal, which will give the user a wallet and will let them process USD payments or whatever crypto or USD or whatever, and then it will send me back sort of an auth so that I can say, oh, now here's your stuff, and it will move it into the platform. That I think is actually, like getting that user experience really great, I think is going to be important. When the internet was just starting out, PayPal, like it was theoretically not needed to have a PayPal that handled that payment experience. You could theoretically accept payments right there on their website like we're used to today. But that turned out not to work because it was just too hard to rebuild that for everybody over and over again. So having the PayPal button that took you out to PayPal and then took you back, which seems shitty, but it was better than what was going on at the time, I promise, actually really helped crack the e-commerce market. And I get why it's not sexy enough for an entrepreneur or like a side project to go and tackle all this stuff, and it involves being slowly regulating, so through payments, but I really hope somebody does it, and I think it'll enable a lot more innovation, because I really see a lot of rebuilding the wheel here with wallets, like spinning people up wallets, spinning people up payments, token movement, secure token movement, and all of that stuff. So if I had one ask for the community, it would be the PayPal for crypto, especially the PayPal for sort of this layer of crypto, especially.
Now that you're talking about it, this is kind of a different topic, but since we're talking about collaboration, one of the things that I think is one of the bigger challenges, and I would love people here in this panel to maybe talk about it, is how do we decentralize, or how do we get to that next level of collaboration, which we're all supposed to be on the blockchain, meaning that we're supposed to be decentralized, and maybe not everybody wants to be decentralized, but in collaborative platforms, that is a question that needs to be resolved, so that it doesn't come from the top, so that in our case, for instance, we're starting to get artists to do their own projects. I mean, very, very little by little, very slowly, making bigger and bigger projects that the artists take upon themselves instead of everything coming from us. So, this decentralization and governance are big words, and everybody likes to throw them to the winds, but in reality, sometimes we have seen that having a structure and a hierarchy and somebody who is calling the shots actually helps get things done. So my question to all my fellow panelists is, How do you go about this? Are you interested in going about this? Because that would entail a collaboration of you as a platform with your artists. If I may.
We're a Snark game or something like this, and in essence, we're all limited resources, and we can only build so much. So, to the extent that there is some kind of collaboration between different groups, we would be open to it.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to unpack with DAOs and governance, and I think it's super fascinating. There's a lot of work being done. I like to think about MakerDAO, which is not related to our space. They have some governance stuff, and like the votes actually translate to on-chain numbers changing. There's other projects where people vote on stuff, but then you have to developers are just supposed to do things. So that's a little trickier with decentralized governance. It's a very deep topic, so we need another panel.
I think we should all constantly focus on this question on it being a very thin layer. And I think events like this are actually a way of having almost like non-governance governance, where we have these conversations and sort of take away mandates. And I think some of that needs to come into formal processes. I still think some of the token standards are all borked, and I'd like to see them firmed. But so that's probably a discussion we actually need to wrangle and fix. But for the most part, I really like the sort of thin layer of governance that we have in the Rare digital art community. We sort of have these concepts that it's got to be scarce, it's got to be decentralized, it's got to be in your wallet, but otherwise, kind of go for it. So I think we all need to remember that we don't have product market fit on this stuff yet. And really, the number one goal we have right now is to get people buying and putting a lot of art up. I am seeing a lot of movement. I do think there's a lot more artists getting involved in this market. I see a lot of growth there. I see collector growth actually starting to move as well. So I think we're getting there, but I think it comes from a lot of experimentation. So I think and you're saying a very similar thing. It's not about being heavy-handed, but it is about us always remembering that we move a little bit as a unit, and then we innovate as a non-unit. So sort of make sure that we're constantly checking in with each other and deciding, hey, do we need to have a really formal conversation about this thing, and otherwise continuing to move very quickly. All the way back.
I almost forgot I was a moderator. This is what happens when you have other panelists. So I'm glad the topic of discussion is valid. There's obviously a lot of financial collaboration, technological, logistic, professional, creative collaboration, and seemingly a lot of runway now for more people coming to collaborate to help shape the blockchain, markets, technologies. I want to jump right into the use cases that you guys have experienced, of working on the projects, etc. I want to start this off with Misha and Judy. Misha with the recent projects, great success, 89 seconds of Atomized, which is being shot upstairs with artist Eve Sussman. And Judy, when the partner Bea was speaking earlier, and she spoke about the auction, the incredible auction. And I was watching, and she described how the two collectors, the bidders who wanted the piece, ended up having a conversation and co-deciding to basically have a digital growth. And that made me think, okay, instead of these black box institutions where someone makes the art in a closed studio, is sold in a closed room, is collected in another closed room or vault or whatever, we're starting to see collaborations that affect everybody in the circle. And I thought that was beautiful. You no longer have these artificial loaded markets, all the speculation. The artist has a much closer relationship with the creator or with the collector. So I wanted to start with you on that point, on how you're starting to see what you're building unfold in the hands of not just the artists, and I'm sure a lot of people are artists, but also the collectors, the buyers, other people who are kind of adjacent to the community, and how you're seeing that collaboration play out.
Well, the fun part of being experimental is that you can just basically do it and see what happens, and this is what we have been doing. The channel auction, that happened in Detroit at the Radical for Change conference. It was the first time it was actually attempted. It's an auction that was devised by some economists, including Glenn Wild, and it's a combination of an English auction, which is price goes up, the bidders bid up, but then you also have a top price that is going down in time. So it's made for things that change with time. And so we had artists drawing as the art was being bid on. So people were bidding on stuff that they didn't know exactly how it was going to look like. Which, just the fact that it was collaborative, that people could see it happen in real time, that people could see 10 artists or however many, 12 artists actually drawing from different parts of the world, I think that changes the frame of mind. Because in a regular auction is one work, one bidder, one winner, right? And in this case, I think what happened between Simon and Yogi, who were the bidders, is that because the price, originally I think that we started at $20,000 and at some point, almost 2 hours into the auction, it was $3,000. Yogi thought, well, I'm gonna spend the same thing as if I won it by myself. If I say 1,500 is my last bid, but if we both spend the same, the artists are gonna get more. And so the artists got double. And that is a wonderful thing, but I think it really was motivated, I would like to think, by the fact that you're seeing something completely unprecedented happen, which is the entire thing, the entire collaboration, the entire real-time thing, and the fact that you can see that there is leeway, that it's not a fixed outcome and it's not a horse race to the top, but there's kind of like room to think, to break the patterns that so that's what I think is super interesting. And compared to the ethereal auction, where it was a straight English auction and everybody was rather like, what? To say the least. I mean, we say it's because the point is, again, for people who want the art to actually have an experience even as they're wanting the art and enjoy the art. I think in a way it happens with Snark, with the Ipsos Man project. What is interesting to me there is that I have my atom, and it'll be really interesting to see how it comes together at some point with all the other people that have the atom and create a new thing. And the beauty of this space is precisely that we can do it. It's vulgarly like, why does the dog scratch his balls? Because he can, So, I mean, like, if we can do all these things because we can. So, that's very exciting.
I'll try to do it very quickly. When we started working at Snark, we collaborated with Narcissus Steve Sussman. And when we were examining what blockchain offered to digital art space, we understood that all of a sudden digital objects started to have properties of a physical object. And then it made us think further, and when we were discussing it with Eve, we thought of a kind of try to think of a way how to create a truly communal ownership, because if a traditional way to democratize access to an expensive piece of art is to edition it, we thought that maybe fracturing it into a lot of, in our case it was over 2,000 pieces, and spreading it across the community would be an interesting way to kind of examine this type of a use case. Can a community, in our case currently we have approximately 300 owners of a single artwork, can they all appreciate and get aesthetic pleasure from their piece, but also be positive about collaborating and allowing any one of the collectors to so the way it works is that any one of the collectors, if you call even a single fracture, you could request a loan from the rest of the community. So you might be somebody sitting in Berlin and you want to watch it in a week, and you send a request, and if the community agrees, maybe 90% of them agree, maybe 50, but whoever agrees, then on that day, all the pieces will arrive to your wallet, and you will be able to reconstruct the piece. And this is something that we're releasing probably next month. And and so we're super excited about it. From what we discovered so far is that very few people actually don't want to share. If anything, what we discovered is that most people are lazy. Like they would rather not even have to think about it. And there's only like 3 or 4% of the community that's actually super active, and they are constantly asking us for making changes one way or another. But the rest are just waiting for the next project to happen. But definitely it's something new for us, and we are excited to see how this whole thing plays out.
So we're thinking about something a little different. It's about how, like why do people buy the physical piece on the wall? And 9 times out of 10 it's because you have an emotional reaction to it. It's an emotive piece. Like good art should create emotion. You either look at it and you think you hate it, but it's an emotion, right? Or you look at it and you love it. And it's how I had a really, really good conversation with a gallery owner in London a few months ago, and he said the biggest barrier for him is when people look at physical pieces, they have an emotional kind of connection. When someone looks at a screen with a digital piece, how do you get that same reaction to a physical, a digital piece? Emotional reaction to a digital piece is harder in some respects. And he was saying that the amount of times that he sells a piece and the person that's bought it comes back and says they see new things within it. They look at it again and they see something that they didn't see the first time, or it starts to the narrative moves with their life. So as they buy the piece and it means something at that time that they bought the piece, and then things happen in their life and they look at the artwork and they kind of have these connections with the artwork, whether they know it or not. There's a connection there, right? And it's how do we recreate that in a digital sense? And we've kind of been playing with the concept where if there's an artist that's creating pieces that changes over time. So there's a digital piece on a marketplace where you buy it on day 1, and you don't know by day 90 how it's going to change over time, right? So there's a couple of things that'll trigger. That'll trigger like, I want to keep looking at it because I want to see if it's changed daily, hourly, weekly. It's a narrative that might start with one thing and finish with another. So there's this constant narrative change that is something there. There's an emotional attachment there. That's something we're playing with a couple of our kind of more digital content, like immersive content designers. They don't describe themselves as artists, but when I look at their pieces, I have an emotional reaction to it, so I describe it as art, right? Whether they probably sometimes they don't like me calling it art, but you know, if I have an emotional reaction to something, can it be art? I don't know. Slightly different topic.
Something that has been really surprising as we've been exploring both auction houses and artists is the amount of layover in what a traditional auction house wants and what a digital artist wants, and they're kind of wanting the exact same things, and they both want the ability to share their information, share their work when they want to, and also what blockchain does is the security, the privacy. And so for us, it's been really fascinating having conversations, with traditional, very traditional auction houses, and talking with these experimental digital crypto artists, and that they're wanting a lot of the same things. And so for us, as we're building out what initially was a provenance title registry, and it has turned into, in a big way, a place for digital artists to come and put their artwork onto an NFT and then go to other marketplaces and sell the work. It's kind of like, how do we build something that works for both of those? What seem like completely opposite entities are actually very similar. And so it's been kind of fun to, I guess just have the ability to talk to both and see we're creating something, we're trying to create something that's going to be useful kind of across the art spectrum.
I'll say that it's really cool to hear all the ways that you guys are building out story and legend into your pieces, I think there's really two reasons people buy art. One is aesthetics and sort of just like the way that it speaks to you, like, oh, this just like I have a reaction when I see this. But when it becomes really valuable, it comes from a legend or a story that is much deeper than what you're sort of reacting to, and that's what the most expensive works or the sort of most interesting or sought after or even deeply personal works are. And I actually think that's somewhere where the digital space has actually more opportunity than the physical space in a lot of ways, because you can take a piece of art, and the art is the art, so if you're just looking at the art, it just is what it is. But then you can also take that and put it in a literal story. And R.A.R.E Labs does this. I think it's profiles.R.A.R.E.io. We do really deep dive, almost overly deep dive narratives on our artists with their art in line and the stories behind them. That takes a lot of work, and it may not be the most scalable thing, and like we'll see kind of where we go with that. But that has turned out to be huge value add, because then the artist can share that and say, here's the story behind my work, and then somebody who's looking to think about like being part of that story by buying the work is able to go really deep. And so you can kind of scroll like Pinterest style, like here's a bunch of work, here's a bunch of work, oh, what about this one? Oh, there's actually more to this one. And you might spend 20, 30 minutes like actually reading about the artist's life and their story, and then actually the story behind this work. That's just one example. The other examples we're talking about here, I think, are like even somewhat more interesting in ways. And I think that's another challenge for all of us, is to find ways to use the fact that this is digital, and it doesn't have to just be like one thing. Like you can click it, it can go deeper, it can be more, it can be linked. Like this is hypertext, it can go further than what it appears. And I think that's probably the biggest opportunity in storytelling.
Tommy inspires me because when he talks, I get ideas. So, but this reminds me of NFTs, which is another way where people are going to be able to collaborate. Not only the storytelling, but adding a token for music to a piece of art that maybe somebody has animated, or that maybe somebody has created a GIF or something like that, and because everything is going to be attributed to the rightful creator, there's a whole, we believe that the NFTs are going to be a whole new portal to great collaboration between artists, between platforms, whatever. So it's not only the story, but also just building on top of this digital. I mean, the digital aspect gives us so much incredible room to experiment, which is what everybody's doing in this room, and it really breaks boundaries that physical art can never do. What is a perfect example is what we auctioned at the Ethereal Summit. The actual digital piece with 20 artists, 19 artists drawing with each other from Kenya, Croatia, Spain, actually like a relay race. Everything actually worked like a charm. They knew how much time they had, they knew when they had to draw, and they did it, and it was seamless. That was a marvel. Getting the physical pieces that they sent us through DHL was a freaking nightmare from hell in each and every case. And so it's like, I mean, to me this is a great kind of metaphor, because we're always thinking of technology as this really cumbersome thing. I mean, of course, blockchain is cumbersome, but what it allows us to do, we completely take for granted. So we should not take for granted that we can exploit the digital freedom and experimentation and play to do these kinds of things.
This question is more for John, Tommy, Corinne, and David, because you guys are all working on platforms, working with other institutions or artists or other professionals to kind of tailor your product. I'm reminded of this question because Vishu said that you're getting feedback from the community, the users or the buyers, collectors, to then put out more content or programs or projects, which is very unique, I think, in the blockchain space. I think most of you, if not all, have either Telegram or Discord, and I see very few other companies in constant dialogue with their users. So I want to kind of explore, especially with John, for example, you moved from Superrare, zooming out to Pixel, so you can build different types of super rares. David, you work with Crypto Kaiju to put out physical NFTs. So we're seeing a lot of inherent collaboration here, and I want to see how that's played out for each and every one of you, and if there's any exciting things that you never expected with your respective platforms.
expect? I guess I'd just say like people in general are super creative. I've also been very surprised at like who is sending us emails. Like the other day we got an email from this guy and he's like, I'm super excited about digital art. I want to hide private keys in my art. And like there's this very long email. And I got to the end and it was like, Senior Asset Wealth Manager at Merrill Lynch. And I was like, what? This is crazy. Like there's people who like, they're inherently creative. They're obviously like, providing for their families, or they have a lot of things going on in their lives. And I think it's just, I've been surprised at we're all obviously all excited about it, but I think just like sort of like the broad range of other individuals who are super excited. I think it's probably been the most surprising thing to me.
I think what's been really one of the things that we're very doubled down on at R.A.R.E is having very deep relationships with our artists. We have a high support model. We spend physical time, with the artists, and that's where the profiles come from. And like we're very hands-on with the artists. And one of the things that's been interesting about that is there are a bunch of artists who really get this concept of creating their digital art, making it scarce and selling it like physical art in some ways. And then B, there are a surprising number of those artists where if you can get the experience to be good enough for their collectors, they're willing to go to bat with this as the primary way that they actually sell their art. We did a hybrid digital and physical art show in Richmond, Virginia that was super successful, and it required physical time from 15 artists or so, and they were really pushing this as like one of the core things that was in their portfolio now. And until we made the process super seamless with US dollar credit card payments and automatically giving people wallets if they didn't have them, we got a lot of really blunt feedback that like, hey, this is a great experience if you know how to do it, but I want to make this the primary thing that I do. I don't think that we thought that was going to be we thought this was going to be sort of an experiment for a lot of artists coming in, and it turned out to be very inspiring for a lot of them. They wanted to go all in on it, and they just didn't necessarily have the tools to do that. I kind of can't imagine what the next phase of that's going to be. I can't predict what it's going to be, but I know that it's going to come, and I just noticed from building digital products for my whole career that I think we've crossed one hurdle, and then there'll be another sort of very fundamental hurdle we'll have to get very creative about to get them more deeply engaged and get less motivated artists to be just as all in on this. But that's the thing that surprised me the most is like how much some pretty serious artists were willing to really go to bat for us on this, how much feedback they were able to give about what it was going to take for this to be their sort of maybe even primary point of sale, and then what it was going to take to make that happen. And I hope that feedback loop continues.
I think, the fact that I'm even sitting here is surprising to me if you would have told me that 6 months ago, because we were not focused on digital art. We were really about the collector and empowering the collector. Codex record is kind of like an aggregator of provenance data. And so it was all through the auction houses. And so the fact that, anyone could sign up and, create a Codex record, and the fact that digital artists have been using it, even though you can't transact on Codex. You can't buy anything on Codex that you see on Codex. And so it's pretty incredible that, that I'm sitting here today talking about digital art when this was in no way, what we sort of set out to do, but it's just been awesome to see the creativity and see the artists come and how they use Codex. It's surprising, it's inspiring, but it was very, very unexpected. And it's been really cool to watch it grow. Sorry, guys.
And I guess being either creative or an artist or in that world, like empathy is like a massive thing that kind of comes inherently with being creative, I think. And just it's a nice surprise. It's just like how patient people are, because we're in a space where like things break, things are buggy, it's really early, and like I said, the UX isn't great, wallets are confusing, and our artists are kind of persevering with us, and then like they say there must be something in it for them, right? If they're sticking around this long with such hard kind of barriers for entry, there's got to be something in this. Like, why are we all here if there's not something deep, like beyond kind of like the new technology? There's actually something quite fundamental about empowering people to let them monetize their craft. Like, let's empower these people to, even if, like, we are a really, like, known origin, where some of our stuff is kind of like $5, $6, or some of it is like, we have artists gifting their stuff, they just want to share their work. And they're really, like, they're really patient with us, because sometimes, like, they'll decide, it may have one or two bugs, or like, put their feedback, and we make, like, the guys work hard, and they hot fix, and they get it live again, and like, we're quite, our site is quite robust, so we're pretty happy with it. But patience is a nice surprise when you get a client like a user base or an artist base or a client base, call it what you will. If they're patient with you, if this was like Facebook's attempt, you'd try it once. If it was shit, you'd be like, I'm out of here, because they're more forgiving. They're more, it's so early, they're more forgiving, and that was an early surprise for us. We thought we had to have this like fully slick outfit of feature-rich thing, actually like a really thin slice that met a few needs about just letting people sell digital pieces. That was enough, and they've stuck with us, and it's like 12 months on, we're still here, like the room's full of people wanting to learn more about it, so that's a nice surprise for me.
Something I find really interesting is the spectrum of users who are interested. And so we can all expect, like crypto artists, people that are crypto savvy, of course, we understand why they're interested. What's really cool is to see kind of the unexpected. And so, like, we have a rare art book dealer in like Eastern Europe, and he's a really avid user of Codex, or a fashion photographer, like it's just over the past probably 6 months, we've seen a huge, I guess, diverse range of who is using not only Codex, but that's how they get involved in the community, and it's not just crypto artists, and it's, I think, hard to see that when you're sitting in a room constantly with the same people, but it's really cool to see it's global, and it's not just artists, it's a lot of people.
I think we could go on forever. I want to leave some time for questions that anyone wanted to ask the panelists.
So you started off, you talked a lot about standardization. To a degree, I agree with standardization, but do you not think at this point in digital art or blockchain art, that's quite limiting? We talk about standard, we talk about editions and things like that, standardizing that. Do you not think the artists themselves understand the importance of scarcity and are incentivized by that and don't really need standardization? That's probably not a very good way.
It's a great question. I think when I'm talking about either principles or just like a guiding light, and it's more like, I don't think we need to have this standardization that we bake into our smart contracts, or that we have like this hard-coded rules engine that we need to decide on, like, no one can ever mint more than 25, or you can't give stuff away. I'm talking about as a standard of principles that we have as some of the kind of main kind of people that are in this space right now. How do we just agree, like, what does R.A.R.E mean? Like, something as simple as that, like, what does R.A.R.E mean? Does R.A.R.E mean 1 of 1, or is that ultra rare? Like, is R.A.R.E 1 of 5? Like, just some real simple kind of conversations, discussions around some of the basics, just so we can get it clear. It's a clear message. That's all collectors want. They just want to know, is this the same artist on multiple platforms? That's about authenticity, right? About the person. And when 1 of 1, does that always be 1 of 1? Like, this will never exist again? So the guy changes it by 1 pixel and puts it on known origin. Is that a different piece of artwork? Because it's like with digital, you can do that. Is that the exact same piece, or do we need a conversation around, well, should it visually look different? Like, there's some hard conversations we need to have about multiple assets being minted on multiple sites, right? Because you screw with the scarcity, and then all of a sudden the value of digital art starts to die. Like, it dies a bit harsh, but it starts to go down, right? So there's some conversations around, like, they're not hard rules, they're just principles that we stand by. And I think it will strengthen the kind of, I think it will reassure the collector, and it will strengthen, like, what this stands for, what are the values of, like, scarce digital art.
Do you not think that responsibility actually comes down to the artists themselves? What do you look at?
I don't know if they're fully aware of the impact.
Yeah, you look at traditional art, and you know, you can do the same piece 10 times, you can put it out, no different to digital art. It's up to them, they realise that the more they print, the more it's appreciated.
That's not. Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. That it's not like standards in the traditional art world are enforced very strictly, and so you would never get into a gallery if you did that even one. Like no gallery would work with you again. And so that's what we're saying. Like if you want to go on the blockchain and mint 1 million of the same thing and try to put them on our platforms, like you can go for it. But our platforms, we need to sort of have. I think I'm with you on like it is on the artist, and we don't want to be limiting. But I think there's like a couple of very fundamental things that we need to decide. Like, you know, we're all trying to kind of compete for the best experience and make sure we find ways to break through. And then there's places where like we all get a bad name if one artist or really one collector all of a sudden is like, I bought this and I actually bought it, especially when we start getting the higher dollar pieces. I bought something for $200 fundamentally on the premise that there was only 10 of them and there's 30 of them. Like, we might lose a pretty important collector there. And then on the flip side, there are things like standards of editions or other things like that we might want to be playing with more. We might let artists in the community and us just be a little bit more like, what is the right way to do this and not enforce it? So that's why I'm always talking on a very thin, I think a very thin layer of more like standards that we, almost social contracts than smart or actual contracts.
Yeah, I think the thin standards are nice. It's like playing poker is fun because everyone knows the rule. Everyone's playing by different rules, and you're like, this game is horrible. I thought I was winning, and you're like, what? It's not fun. It sort of takes the fun out of it. Like, you need a mental load to think about it before you can like really dive in. And so like, if the collectors feel like you're getting cheated or anything like this, I think it makes it difficult to build an ecosystem around it.
Anybody else before we close out? Any questions? Well, thank you guys. Oh, one more.
Hi. So in the beginning of this panel, there was a few comments made about how, like last year, one big conversation was around smart contracts and resale royalties, and the kind of like capacity to maybe develop more equitable resale market within this space. But then you all said like, oh, that's kind of decided, settled already, but I would love to just hear a little bit about maybe what, one, if that is settled and decided, and two, what might be sort of the beyond that, or like what other possibilities do you see within these platforms and like just within this technology for kind of more equitable dealings?
For us, at least me, one of the most exciting things about being able to code a smart contract where if we go into a secondary market, the artist can actually get royalty out of that. To me, that is a complete game changer because it feels fair. And if you're as a collector think that that is depreciating your what you have, then maybe you shouldn't be a collector on that. If you cannot understand that the artist deserves to always get a royalty, like novelists get royalties when their books sell, and or like supposedly musicians or everyone else, like they need, every time the work sells, then there are other places where you can collect. But to us, the art has value, and it doesn't have like a value once. The whole point about this digital thing is that the value will accrue, and like Bea explained before, the two collectors that bought that piece, we could have done 2 editions, but we said no, it's going to be 1 edition because we said that there's like single NFTs, and they're going to have to co-own it. And thank God Simon is good at this, and he created a way in which the 2 co-owners, Simon, can have the wallet, and they're going to have to decide together how they want to deal with the art. But in the meantime, the artists are already on other projects that are related to that conversation, and we think that the collectors should also get a code from that. So everybody gets a code. So it's a completely different way of thinking. We have to get into another mindset, which is more about co-owning or like everyone more participatory. And that's where we're.
Yeah, I think so. It's definitely not decided right now. It's sort of like each platform handles it in a different way, and I think it's a difficult thing to standardize. At least the way we think about it, we're playing in an ecosystem of open assets, and so then you start locking them down and making too many rules around them. They're not really open assets anymore. So I think it's like a balancing act, and I think we're all still kind of experimenting a lot with it. So it functions in different ways.
Cheers, thanks. So yeah, I think lessons learned, right? In the last, when we first went out with our kind of smart contract, we were a primary marketplace. So it was like, you upload your art, you can sell it, and it was like a one-to-one relationship. And the new models that have come where it's like secondary sales, you get a small percentage of the secondary sale. I think that's a beautiful way to kind of keep that artwork living. And the thing with digital art, there is liquidity there. Physical art hardly ever moves, right? When you buy a physical piece, you own it, and you tend to own it for life. Digital art, we've seen it moves a lot more. So that is the secondary sale model is a really smart way of just keeping the artist ticking over with a small percentage. We've also been experimenting with a new thing where it's like appreciate to own. So by hitting the like button, we can. So not everyone can afford to buy art even at $5, $10, right? But what we can afford is like every time you like something or you see something that you appreciate, you take a micro payment of a tiny fraction. And if you like something more than like X times, you own it. It like becomes yours. It's like the more you like if you really like something, then say that you like it, appreciate it, and then you own it. And this is like a model that we're playing with where not everyone can afford to buy these pieces that are 1 and 2 ETH or even like $10 pieces sometimes, but they really like it. They just put a small appreciation on it. It's a tiny fraction of an ETH, but it's like it's nice for the artist because they get that endorphin hit that they've created something that someone likes, and if they continue to like something, they can own it eventually. So it's an experiment that we're playing with. It's not there yet, anyway.
I think we agree we can go on forever on this great panel. So I want to thank everyone for joining us, and congrats on your last panel of watching me. Get this damn thing over with. And thank you,